Hello everyone, it's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony here. Just after sunrise, it's Sunday, March 16th. I wanted to check in for this week coming up. Again, we're in this potent energy right now. We just had the blood moon on Thursday night into Friday night. Not sure if you got to see it. The clouds parted, thankfully, where I am, so I was able to see the blood moon, at least some of the time. Clouds are kind of rolling over periodically, but that's, again, symbolic of a lot of things that are happening now in terms of releasing old patterns, releasing old habits, etc. And then Mercury went retrograde on Friday night, and that's the ruler of Virgo. So we have this lunar eclipse in Virgo, ruler of Virgo, turning retrograde. So we're definitely in a period of review and release and opening up for what's coming. And I've been talking about this for several weeks now, the end of the old, the beginning of the new theme that we're in. Today is a particularly interesting astrological day. I have mentioned the void of course moon, the concept of that before. I rarely mention it, but today is one of those days where the moon is void of course all day. And what that means is the moon makes, moves pretty quickly throughout the zodiac, and it makes major aspects, like conjunctions, oppositions, squares, trines, sextiles. Those are the major aspects. And its final major aspect before it leaves a sign is when that period is known as a void of course period. And it can be as short as a couple of minutes to as long as several hours. And in this case, we're talking about a 22-hour void of course. So this morning, about 3 a.m. or so Pacific time, the moon in Libra squared Mars in Cancer. And that's the last major aspect that's making while it's still in Libra. The moon doesn't enter Scorpio until after midnight Pacific time tonight. So the entirety of this day, including this moment right now, we're in this void of course. Okay, and so it depends on who you talk to astrologically, the significance of void of course, but they tend to have similar energy to like a Mercury retrograde, for example. And considering we're in a Mercury retrograde that just started a couple days ago, and Venus is retrograde, right? It just kind of adds to this, again, idea of review, release, being conscious of what is happening in the moment, okay? Being very aware of what's happening. Because it's easier to make mistakes during these kinds of energies. It's easier to let our emotions carry us instead of our rationale. Okay, so just extra caution would be the word of the day. As far as the rest of this week goes, we have the sun, which is in Pisces still, that is going to be joining the north node of the moon here on Monday. Okay, and the themes that we've been in since January, since the North Node dipped into Pisces, has been all about this releasing the old habits, that, the South Node in Virgo kind of stuff, and embracing trust and faith for the future. Okay, and so the sun conjuncting the North Node here is kind of taking the energy of the lunar eclipse and reminding us of the reason for the release, right? Because the sun is on the North Node, it's where we're going. And so it's reminding us why we need to release those old habits, why we need to release all that control, etc. So it's just a nice way of aligning us back with our focus for the future. Okay. Then on Wednesday, this is a significant aspect, even though it has happened every year. This will be the 14th straight year that it's happened. The sun will conjunct Neptune in Pisces at the 29th degree this time. So we go back to February 2012. That's when the sun entered Pisces. It conjuncted Neptune, which was in Pisces, pretty fresh into Pisces at that point, at 0 degrees. Okay, and now we have the final conjunction of the sun and Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees here. It will not happen again. Neptune it's going to enter Aries in late March, and it'll dip back into Pisces late October to late January. But by the time the sun gets back into Pisces next year, Neptune's in Aries. Okay, so the next Sun-Neptune conjunction, in other words, will take place in Aries next March 2026. Okay, so this here on Wednesday, this is the final Sun-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. Okay, so think back to 2012, February 2012. That's when this whole thing began. Okay, so it's coming full circle, essentially. And this has a lot to do with, again, the themes of this North Node in Pisces. So the timing is perfect, because it is about embracing kind of our highest ideals, our highest intentions, not just the low-level kind of intentions, okay? And keeping us on point and in alignment with our true soul intentions, not what our ego wants. Because Virgo has a lot to do with the ego. What needs to be done now? What can I take control over, right? And so we're releasing that kind of energy, embracing the idea of what else is possible in my space. Where else can I grow, essentially? So we're wrapping up that cycle. I'm excited about it. Even as a Pisces sun myself, I feel like Neptune in Pisces has been pretty challenging going back to 2012. So I'm looking forward to the new Neptune and Aries era that is on the horizon. Then as we get to the end of the week, so Friday into Sunday of next week, so we're talking the 21st. Oh, actually, before we get there, Thursday is the equinox. So that is when the sun will switch from Pisces to Aries. Does that every year, but this year is a little bit more significant because not only did we have Venus and Mercury crossing that point, and they're about to retrograde over that point again, but we have Saturn and Neptune that are going to cross that point here in the spring and back over that point again in the fall, and then make their final pass in February of next year. Okay, so really the beginning of 2026 is when we're all in on going forward. 2025 is really a transition year, and I mentioned that before. It's a 9-year numerologically speaking, so we are finishing some things up. 2026 is a 1 year. It is kind of full steam ahead. So we're reviewing and clearing things right now. So this equinox is a little bit more significant because there's other planets. There's 4 other planets involved in crossing this equinox point. And they're not crossing it as quickly as the sun does. The sun just does it in 1 day. It's over. Venus and Mercury are crossing it a few times. Neptune and Saturn will do the same thing over the longer period. So Venus and Mercury are going to be done here in the spring, but it won't be until next winter that Saturn and Neptune are done. So it's that personal review, release, opening to the new, followed by the collective release and opening to the new that comes on its heels. And then finally we get to the end of the week. This is when Venus retrograde is going to meet up with the sun. So it's back. It was ahead of the sun. It's backed up. Now the sun is kind of caught up to it. Okay. So you might have noticed over the last several months that after sunset you get that bright Venus in the west. So that is no longer going to be the case. As you get to the end of the week, Venus will be setting with the sun. So we won't see Venus anymore for a little while. In a few weeks, if you get up like this time of day, sunrise just before the sun comes up, it's going to be the opposite. So the Venus is going to lead the way. Venus will rise before the sun. So it'll be a morning star. So just before sunrise, you'll see the bright Venus in the east rather than seeing the bright Venus in the west after sunset. So that's an interesting thing. Astrologically, this is the halfway point. Next weekend will be the halfway point of the current Venus retrograde, which started March 1st and it ends April 12th. So we're halfway through as we get to this next weekend. And as that happens, both Venus retrograde and the sun, while they're together in Aries, are going to be forming a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. Back in early February, when Venus made its first pass with the sextile to Pluto in Aquarius, I mentioned it being a time of personal reinvention as we move to these spring months. Okay, so we're in the middle of this reinventiveness, this reinventing our image situation that we're in. Okay, and so this is just going to further emphasize that, the sense that we're hitting a turning point for this whole 3-month period or whatever. We're about a month and a half into it, and we're hitting the turning point of recognizing what parts of us need to go, because the future is calling us. Pluto in Aquarius is all about a very different future than what Pluto in Capricorn was holding us into, essentially. And so now we're looking at ourselves with the Aries energy of who is this self in this new world, this new future, and where do I stand? Okay, and so these few months have been a time of thinking about that, going into that. And when the sun in retrograde Venus hit that sextile to Pluto this weekend coming up, it's going to amplify that up a little bit more. So anyway, that's all I have for this week in astrology. Thank you for checking in with me here. I will be back next week. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you're looking for personal consultations, how this stuff works in your chart, I'm available for that as well. Until next week, though, take care, and we'll see you then.